Well, hey there, I'm back. And I think it's time to take a little break and chill out for a minute and practice the gift of gab. So, today, what do we want to talk about today? You know, I've been jotting down some notes here and there along the way over the weekend about little things that capture my attention and or my eye. And one of the things that's on my list is something I noticed online. And that was an article that talked about cruise ships and how they're taking cruise ships right now and they are docking them somewhere. And I think one of the places that they're doing this is kind of in Philippines and Thailand and all around that area. They dock these big cruise ships and they are taking these cruise ships and they're stripping them down. And it's really interesting to see them. It's not like seeing pictures of the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean, you know, and you get to go into all the chambers with one of those underwater cameras or anything like that. But it's kind of similar because it's on dry land. Well, you know, it's docked toward dry land. And what they're doing is they're starting to take them apart piece by piece and using the scrap metal for other things, I guess, and recycling as much of it as possible because the cruise ship industry has been greatly affected by this pandemic. And I guess that some of the cruise lines are deciding to take some of their fleet and get some return on their investment, if you will. And it's interesting to see pictures and photographs of people actually working real hard to take apart the cruise ships. And it's like sawing it in half. And you get to see each level from an outside view looking in. And I thought that was kind of interesting because here they are deciding to take apart something that took years to build. You know, that doesn't take, you know, you can't build these cruise ships overnight. It takes a lot of time and energy and planning and money and what have you to build a ship to begin with. And then to go in and to tear it down, it can take a long time to do that too. But what I found interesting about perusing this article and seeing the photographs of them stripping down these old cruise ships or cruise ships in general, not necessarily old ones, is that they are taking them apart and they're recycling, which is good. They're going to recycle. And of course that provides jobs for some people right now in those areas. But the thing that really struck me that I wanted to talk about or share is that while I'm reading this article, I'm looking out my window and I'm comparing what's going on around town and what I've seen happen in big cities like Los Angeles, is that construction is everywhere. And I remember back when I was on tour in the mid-'80s doing some children's shows, we would travel from city to city to city, and we'd constantly be running into things like road construction, and we'd stay at hotels where they're building buildings next door, and so there was a lot of racket and a lot of noise. But everywhere we went in the mid-'80s, construction was happening. And I remember thinking back then that America's constantly under construction. And even when I came to visit my friend in Las Vegas in that time period, there was nothing on the outskirts of Las Vegas. There's a highway through Las Vegas called the 15. And on the west side of the 15, it was nothing but desert in the mid-'80s. And now it is nothing but housing developments and businesses all the way up to the mountains of Red Rock Canyon. And it's amazing to see the difference, but construction was happening and it continued to happen, and it just sprawls out and grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. And that was back then. But what I've been noticing over the past few years is that there's a lot of construction going on for big high-rises. Downtown Los Angeles has new buildings that are going up. Everywhere you go in Hollywood or around Santa Monica, everywhere you go, they're building residential apartment buildings that are like huge. And the rents right now are sky high. And even though in places like New York City, I hear the rents are kind of, plummeting a bit. So they're trying to make it more, what's the word I want? Flavorful, more appealing for you to want to come and move into New York City and rent an apartment there. I still wonder in places like Los Angeles that are doing new construction on these huge high-rises, whether it's for business, commercial, residential, they're building all these buildings, and who is moving into them if you don't have the ability to pay that rent? If you don't have a job, if the rent is so inflated that who can afford it, and there's a mass exodus from cities like, Los Angeles, then why are you building all these buildings? Who's going to live there? What businesses are going to operate there in an empty building? Even the building that I'm staying in right now, ever since I've been here, has not really been full. And I know a lot of high-rises are like that right now. So I'm trying to figure out, if all this construction is going on, especially during the pandemic, it's really been a construction boom. I've seen it around the area where I am, where they're building a huge addition to the convention center. They're building new big high-rise hotel resorts, and they're building new entertainment venues that are huge, and new apartment buildings. And they're just going to sit there half empty or even less. And I'm wondering, why are we building and building and building when nobody's going to be able to live there, or very few anyway? I guess the hope is that they're going to attract people who can afford it and want to move in. But I can't for the life of me really see that happening. I mean, if anyone is like in a position like I am, where jobs are very few right now and income is very, very low, and you don't have benefits that are coming in anymore because they're drying up, then who's going to live there? That's what I've been thinking, and that got started by me reading this article about the ships being stripped down, and they're tearing them down. So even though the ships are being torn down, they're building all these huge buildings. Are we going to have to do the same thing with the buildings eventually, because we're just wasting all this incredible amount of money and resources on building huge buildings and new construction when we don't really need to have it? Developers are just developing for the almighty buck, I think, because it's their investment, it's their livelihood and their job, I guess. But I'm trying to understand, it's, consumer demand doesn't demand this, it seems like to me. I mean, all you got to do is look at the news and read all the articles, and you'll see that nobody can afford all these things, or very few anyway. And I know that I've had the questions come at me recently in the surveys that I take sometimes online. Is this a good time to buy big ticket items? Well, I think it is a good time to buy big ticket items if you can afford it and you have that money stashed away. But on the other hand, now's a good time to not be spending money, because you don't know exactly how things are going to work out with the economy, and in the long run, at least in the next 3 to 5 years, you need to be prepared to have your survival skills kicked in, And if you have money saved up, you need to use that money for the sake of taking care of your family, not buying new big ticket items. And I know that I have seen people out there buying vehicles and homes and what have you. And I'm wondering, how are they doing it, or why are they doing it? Are they truly going to be able to keep up with it, or are they going to end up defaulting out of it, you know? So, I mean, that's a question that only the individual can answer for themselves on whether or not that's going to be able to be a viable option for them. But I certainly am questioning it, because it seems like there's a lot of this going on, this construction, this building, while our country is being torn down and ripped apart by all these other variables, you know. And we know what those variables are, because all you got to do is turn on the news and see what's going on. You know, we've got all these political issues and pandemic issues and division going on, and all this destruction, and at the same time all this building up is going on with construction. But it all seems about this. So it's just a curious thing that I found myself thinking about as I watched them strip down these ships, is thinking about all this construction that's going on. America is still under construction. I don't know if it'll ever stop. And we need to use our resources that we already have available to us, is what I'm thinking. I mean, that's what I think when I go out and think about what I'm going to buy or purchase. What do I really need? And where is the best use of every little penny that I make? And yeah, I might spend it on a cup of coffee frivolously, but for the most part, big ticket items and housing and vehicles and investments in our future have to be weighed very carefully, especially right now when we're trying to figure out what we're going to do the day after tomorrow. So anyways, those are just some of my thoughts as I was correlating this story with memories of the past and what I see going on around me. I'm just afraid we're going to have all these buildings built and they're just sitting there empty and like a ghost town. And I know that there are some towns right now that are completely shut down, and they are kind of like ghost towns. So, and those are not big cities necessarily. But if we're going around and we're putting businesses on hold and basically shutting them down, and they're having to board them up, it just doesn't seem to make sense to be building new businesses that are just going to be sitting there empty. So anyways, I don't know how I feel about it or what I think about it, other than I just think some of it's unnecessary. And I don't know where it's going and if it makes sense to be doing all this building. I am a firm believer in trying to build things up, and whether that be our self-esteem, our positivity, our energy, you know, we want to, you know, give ourselves that pep talk to really go get them and do all the things we want to do and be all we can be. But there is a line that we have to draw somewhere along the way that says we can only do so much. And that's one part of what I'm thinking about all this. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I'd like to know what some other people feel about that. You know, maybe there'll be a huge boom and comeback at some point in time, but I'm not sure how long that's going to take, and if it makes sense to already have all these buildings just continue to grow and grow and grow just to sit there doing nothing. Like the rest of us. We're just sitting here doing not a whole lot of anything, trying to be productive. I mean, I'm doing this video in this little coffee break time. Anyway, if you have any thoughts you'd like to share with me, please leave them in the comment box below. If you like the video, give me a big thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and share the video if you're so inclined to. And I'll be seeing you next time on the coffee break. Until then, have a great day. Bye now.